This is Solve It for Kids.
Hello, my amazing and curious friends. My name is Jennifer, the Dean of all things STEM STEAM, and this is Solve It for Kids, the podcast that gives kids and families a peek inside the real world of scientists, engineers, and experts as they solve problems in their jobs using creativity, cooperation, and critical thinking. And now please welcome to the show my podcast partner, Galactic Space Geek, Jeff Gagne.
Hello, Jennifer, and hello, listeners. I am buzzing about this episode, Jennifer, so let's please get right to it.
Oh, is that a hint, Jeff?
No, not at all.
What problem are we solving today?
How do you protect native bees?
How can we support native bee populations? Ooh, this is going to be an excellent episode. Who is our guest today, Jeff?
Our guest today is the wonderful Julie Travaglini. She is currently the Senior Director of Education and Curriculum for the Allegheny Land Trust and a bee lover.
Welcome to the show, Julie.
Thanks so much for having me. Bee expert is generous. Bee lover.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Bee enthusiast.
I like it.
Yeah, but that's what we're going to talk about today. And I think this is so intriguing and exciting to learn about, you know, one of nature's important creatures. So I have to ask, did you always love bees ever since you were a kid?
I was always a nature nerd. I was always that kid who was outside eating dirt, playing with worms. I will say I was terrified of bees as a kid. It took me until I was older. I would run from bees when I was younger.
Most of us didn't we? I mean, as a kid.
Yeah, I would see a bee
that.
and just scream and run. It was crazy, but now they're some of my favorite creatures. So it's funny how the tides turn a bit, but always a nature nerd, always into playing outside. I was always messy as a kid. You know, I'm sure my mom hosed me off, you know, every day I had to get hosed off.
Nice.
That sounds
nature.
fun. That sounds
Nice. So as a nature nerd, what did you then progress to, whether it be high school into college? What sort of, was there a trigger that said, I am going to do this as a career I want to do with my life?
I think I always wanted to go into the sciences for sure, in the natural sciences. So I took pretty much every science class our high school offered, anything from biology to earth and space science to anatomy. You know, I took all of it, used my elective space to take more science classes.
Yay for science.
I know, right? I know.
Yes.
I maxed out the science credits for sure. And then I went into college and I knew I wanted to do the sciences as well. I actually started off as a conservation science major, so conserving resources in the natural world. But I found that there was a lot of economics and a lot of non-sciencey work that went into it.
Yeah.
And I really missed that science aspect. So I switched to biology, and I did biology with a focus in the natural sciences, environmental science. So that was kind of how I got into that. I did an internship teaching environmental science at an arboretum in Ohio and fell in love with doing environmental ed. And I've been doing that since I was 19 now. So pretty much half my life. I'm 36. So yeah, half my life I've been doing environmental education.
I mean, that's so cool. And that's really something that you can get your hands on with kids and adults too, for that matter. We could all learn more about the environment. So what kind of drew you to bees then? I'm curious, you know, since you were like, I didn't like them as a kid. How did you get to be okay with them now?
I think learning about the fascinating biology behind the bees is what really got me interesting. They're such fascinating creatures in the way they live and the way they interact with one another and the roles they play in the ecosystem. I think that was what really triggered me to want to learn more about bees. And I always share this fun fact with children and adults alike that I'm based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And here in Pennsylvania, we actually are home to more species of bees than birds. So we have 434 bee species in Pennsylvania and 414 bird species. That is a mind-blowing fact. Most people can name maybe half a dozen type of bees at most. And, we have over 400 species. So the diversity is incredible. It's insane. And there's always more to learn about them. I think I find a new type of bee every time I go for a hike, which is so exciting and so much fun. And just learning more about how they live and how important they are has just really been, a huge piece of my work the last few years.
Okay, so I have to ask, you just said that many species of bee and you find a different kind of bee every time you go for a hike.
Wow.
How are you noticing? Bees are so small. How are you noticing
Good question.
every time that you go out that you see a different one? Is it a different design, different stripes? How do you notice that?
I hike at what I call an educational pace, which is very, very, very slow. The last time I went for a hike, it took me 2.5 hours to go less than a mile.
Oh, wow.
So we are stopping a lot. We are noticing. I stop at any kind of big patch of flowers and just look and notice. And you're looking for size, you're looking for color, you're looking for patterns, you're looking for different antenna type. So it's most people think of bee and they think black and yellow striped, but there are red bees, there are green bees, there are blue bees. We have bees of all different colors and shapes and sizes. So lots of diversity out there to look for.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea. Blue?
Yeah,
bees, red bees. Oh my gosh, now
Absolutely.
I'm going to have to go look these up. Now, are those only found in your area? I assume that there are certain bees in certain places of the country.
Sure, but bees are pretty widespread. So the bees we have here in Pennsylvania are going to be fairly typical of most of the Northeast. Most of the Northeast has pretty tremendous bee diversity. Wow. I can only imagine the bee diversity of living in a more tropical region like Florida or Southwest is like a whole other world for me.
Now you've made me curious because that's where I live. So now I might have to figure out what kind of bees are living around me. I mean, also, how did you overcome your fear of getting close to them? Because I still have that a little bit.
Yeah, I think learning that most bees don't sting really helped.
Really?
Oh,
yes.
Okay, that's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Male bees are not stingers. The stinger is actually a modified ovipositor of a bee. So only the females have them. So any male bee is completely unable to sting, has no ability to sting whatsoever. So there you are eliminating half the bees right there that can possibly sting you.
I didn't know that.
So that was a really great... That helped me a lot.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
my odds are immediately better of not getting stung.
Okay, so I have to ask again on the colors because I did not know there were red bees or blue bees.
Yeah.
So are those bees, did they evolve that way based on their habitat, or are they a completely different type of bee? I don't even know if that's a good question to ask.
Yeah, well, there are 7 families of bees in the world. And here in Pennsylvania, we have 6 of the 7. Most of the United States can probably say the same thing. One family of the bees is Australia specific. So, we won't have that bee, but we do have most of the other families of bees. So we've got a lot of evolutionary history happening with the bees. They've all evolved very differently. They all have very different behaviors and nesting and food preferences. Some are even kleptoparasites, which means they will steal food from other bees. So a lot of really interesting evolution behind bees as well. It's believed that bees evolved from wasps, actually, because wasps are predators. Wasps are out eating other insects generally.
Yes.
So when they were on the flowers and they were eating insects that were on flowers, they were ingesting some of the pollen. So it's believed that bees evolved from the ingesting of pollen from wasps. So they kind of diverged in that direction. Yeah.
I had no idea about all of this. Okay. So now I want to ask about kind of what we were talking about. So how can we support native bee populations? I mean, the first one is, don't kill bees, right? Like if they're coming at you, don't swat them away. But is there other things that we can do to support native bee populations?
Yeah, I mean, that very first step that you take is to learn more about them, to kind of squash your fear, because the more you know, the less fearful you are of anything. That goes for anything beyond nature, even too. The more you know, the less
That's very true. That's very true.
Yes. So learning about them helps. That means you're going to protect them. It's hard to protect something you don't truly understand. So you're going to want to protect them and not squish them. One of the best things you can do to support native bees is to plant native plants. So when you're planting out your garden, planting plants that are native or supposed to be in your area is the best way to support those bees, because that's what they see as their food source. Right. So when you plant non-native plants and non-native trees and non-native shrubs, those aren't a recognized food source. So you're not going to attract nearly as many pollinators, especially bees, to those plants, because they're not going to see it as their food source. Yeah, so you always want to try to plant. Yeah, you always want to try to plant native plants, and you want to try to plant native plants that bloom all year too. So you want to have plants that bloom in the spring for our bees that wake up really early after a cold winter. If you live in a place where there is winter, I don't want those bees coming out right after the snow. And then having something that blooms through the summer and into the fall as well to support them before they go into hibernation. So making sure you're planting a variety of native plants that are going to support the bees throughout the 4 or 3 seasons, I should say. They're hibernating in winter. But so being able to support them and their needs through as many seasons as possible is really important.
That's good. Yeah.
Okay. I know we're going to keep talking about these bee habitats and helping them. I wonder, if we're planting flowers to help the bees and native plants, I wonder, do people worry, it's a thought in my head right now, are we inviting them to create a hive nearby? So we're going to end up with too many bees near our house or near where we did that?
Yeah, it's a common misconception that all bees make hives. It's actually very rare. So 90 to 95% of all bees are solitary, which means they do not live in a large hive like our honeybees. When we think of bees, we tend to think of our honeybees, which do live in what's called a eusocial hive. Eusociality is like the highest form of social living in nature. That means that they have individual jobs like nurse bees and worker bees, drone bees, and that they live in multi-generational hives as well. So there will be more than one generation living in a hive. So that's kind of like your top form of sociality within nature, is that eusocial. And honeybees are truly eusocial, but that is very rare. Most bees, 90 to 95%, are solitary, meaning they live on their own. They create their nests to lay one egg at a time in their nest, and their nest can range from underground, a hole underground, to a hole in the lawn. Most commonly, it's going to be in the stem of a plant is where they nest. So yes. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you're not going to end up with too many bees, because forming that hive is really unique to only a few types of bees.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
The more you know.
Right. Well, it's kind of funny because, as I think what most of us know are exactly what you described. The honeybees, that they're the ones who actually form the hive. And we think about the black and white bees and the bumblebees and, all of those kinds of things. So, wow. I'm really surprised by all of this. So we've also heard that the bee populations are going down and whatever. Is that all bee populations? Or again, are we just hearing about the honeybees? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I'm going to get on my honeybee, tangent here.
Okay.
When people say save the bees, the most common image associated with that is the honeybee.
Right.
But we have domesticated the honeybee. The honeybee is a farmed creature. When we're saying save the bees, we mean the native bees, because those are the populations really being affected by habitat loss and by pollution. When we say Western honeybee, we do not mean Western, we mean Western Asia and Western Europe. So,
okay.
To our area, honeybees did not even cross the Rocky Mountains until like the 1840s. So honeybees are not native to our area. We farm them. We farm them by the trillions. We truck them across the country to agricultural areas to help with pollination. So they're not the ones we need to be truly concerned about. Honeybees aren't even our best pollinators. So honeybees are generalists. They do not have the specific body parts to attach extra pollen. So bees like our Carter bees and our resin bees, our mason bees, they're actually better pollinators because they have specialized body parts that attach more pollen to their abdomen and to their legs.
Kidding.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're pollinating more than our honeybees are. Our honeybees can only attach pollen to their legs, so they can only carry a tiny amount. So pollinators,
Slackers.
I'm telling you, they get all the credit and they're not doing most of the work.
They must have very good like marketing PR people, right? Like
Exactly. We somehow honed in on that creature. It's kind of the same with the butterflies too. You know, we had that big push to save the monarch. You know, the monarchs are cool now. Their numbers went up over 200%. It's time to start looking at some of the other species of butterflies. Some of our other creatures that need help too. You know, we tend to find one really charismatic creature and focus on it. With the straws, it was the sea turtles. So it's the honeybee's turn for that, I suppose. But in reality, it's, you know, the 433 other species that we have in Pennsylvania that we really need to focus on.
I had no idea about all of these different bees. I mean, I came into this thinking, oh, we're going to talk about the little bumblebees and the honeybees. Wow, you're mind-blowing with this.
Really, and thank goodness we have you on the show, because a lot of our listeners are going to be having this same mind-blowing. So getting back to how we can help, what does it mean? Aside from, is it just planting flowers and then hope in the next few weeks you see some bees come along and start sucking on them? Or are there other things that we can do to help?
No, we can do a lot to support native bee populations. Something that's really important to do is to leave your garden go over the winter. So it's really tempting once all of your flowers have bloomed and all of your plants have bloomed to cut it down and kind of make it look nice and empty for the winter. But the best thing you can do is leave all of that stuff in your flower bed because bees are going to use those flower stems to nest over the winter. And they're going to use...
Never knew that.
Yeah, so they're going to hibernate in things like the flower stems or the stalks of some of your bigger flowers. They're going to hibernate in the leaf litter in your garden. So it's really important to leave all of that stuff until the springtime so that the bees have a place to hibernate and be protected and spend the winter, so that when spring rolls around, they can emerge and, you know, immediately start foraging for flowers.
Wow. I mean,
that's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. So now I have to ask this because, you know, I live in the land of manicured lawns.
Yes.
So let's talk about how that is affecting. I mean, and, you know, if you're in a homeowners association or whatever, you know, it's difficult to not spray your lawn or keep your grass looking really green. But from what I'm understanding, that is not a great thing for bees and other creatures.
The manicured lawn is one of the biggest plights that we've got going on right now. I don't know how we got into this mindset that a complete monoculture of grass is the way to go.
Yes.
But that does not support biodiversity of any sort, you know, fungal, insect, like it doesn't support anything truly. So it's hard, but a lot of cities are starting to change their rules about that because they're starting to realize that we've got to do more and we've got to do more to support biodiversity. There's been a lot on the news circulating about the insect collapse and how the numbers of insects in general are just going down everywhere. And as that goes down, that disrupts the entire ecosystem.
Right.
So I think a lot of cities are starting to come to their senses that it's okay to have plants over 8 inches tall. The 8-inch rule is like, you can't have plants over 8 inches, you know.
And it doesn't have to be green. So what we've done actually in ours, and I was going to ask you about this, is so our front lawn, you know, what everyone sees has to be pretty, but in the back, we've added, you know, we don't spray or, you know, it's not as much spray and whatever. And we have kind of like a natural kind of forest or whatever behind us. And we promote stuff like that. So that's something people can do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Spraying is no good for anybody. It's no good for you. It's no good for your pets. It's no good for your insects. And there's a study out of a college that, I forget which college, it was somewhere in the Northeast. They did a study about spraying pesticides and the instances of cancer in your pets and how there was a positive correlation with the more you sprayed or the more likely you were to spray, the higher the chance your pet had of getting a certain type of cancer.
Oh,
Because you have to think,
awful.
when you're spraying your grasses and your plants, your pets are coming into contact with that every single day.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's coming through, it's absorbing through the pads of their feet, they're sticking their face in the grass. So spraying is not just bad for the bees and the
Right.
bugs. It's not great for anything, truly. I don't spray at all. I spray nothing. My backyard is actually a certified backyard habitat through the Audubon Society, so I'm not allowed to spray anything.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool program through your local Audubon societies where you can get some help on how to best support wildlife in your backyard, and they'll help you pick out plants, and they'll help you pick out bird feeders and all sorts of different things to help your yard support wildlife. So it's a really cool
That
program.
just sounds cool.
Yeah.
I can totally envision listeners, especially kids of a certain age, like a certified backyard that's a good backyard for
Yeah.
wherever you live. That sounds great.
Yeah, the whole goal of the program is to start connecting these properties together so that we're making kind of a corridor of our own little
Right.
I
parks,
love that.
essentially, of our own little way stations for insects, and especially when they're migrating too, to have stopover places as they're flying, south for the winter generally.
Sure.
So it's a really cool program. It's a smaller version of, I don't know if you've heard of Doug Tallamy's Homegrown National Park.
No.
Yeah,
not.
that's a really cool program as well. It's trying to get Americans to focus on planting natives and rewilding their landscape instead of the manicured
Oh.
lawns. And the whole goal of it is that if a certain percentage, and it's a very small percentage, of Americans would convert their lawn to native plantings, we would have more acreage than all of the US's national parks combined.
Wow.
No kidding.
If a very small percentage, I forget the percentage, it was like 20-ish% maybe or less, converted their
Wow.
lawns, that we would have more acreage of homegrown national parks, so home
Right.
parks.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a really, really cool program. And that's on, you can follow that on different social medias as well, Homegrown National
And
Park.
anybody can do this. Anybody can sign up for this Audubon certified backyard and
Yeah,
get
absolutely.
information. I totally want to do this. Last weekend, we went to Acadia National Park. I don't know if either of you.
Oh, beautiful.
Right?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
She knows.
I
I was there
if you've
last
been
summer,
there,
yeah.
that's your reaction. It's just like, wow. And
Yeah.
if I could harness just even a tiny little bit of that in my backyard, it'd be great for wildlife. But imagine the stress, freeness, right? You
Mhm.
just go in your backyard and you imagine you're at Acadia. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to look this up. This sounds so amazing.
Yeah, Acadia is where I first saw my first tricolored bumblebee, so I was very happy about that.
Wow.
Very
Really?
pretty bumblebee.
What colors? I have to ask real fast.
Black, yellow, and white.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so I know Jennifer's going to get to our challenge here real quick. I want to bring us right back to the beginning. This has been so fascinating. I have learned so much. Can you give our listeners, both kids and grown-ups, can you give them a little more detail on what it means to go for a hike at an educational pace? I loved that. And I'm stealing it from you, and I'm going to be sharing that.
There is no stealing in the educational world. It is lovingly borrowing.
Can you just say a little bit more about why it's worth taking a hike at an educational pace, not worrying about, oh man, we got more miles in than I thought we were going to get.
Right. It's so eye-opening. I've been teaching environmental education for close to 18 years now.
Wow.
And I still see something new every single time I go outside. Every single time. Because you take the time to look. I know it's hard when you take kids outside and you take them outside to look and they're like, I don't see anything. I'm like, well, you scan for half a second. You're not going to see anything.
Slow
You have to look.
Yeah.
Yes, you have to actually open your eyeballs and look for more than a second on something, flip over the rock, put it back where you found it, but flip over the rock and see what's under there.
Yes, do not pocket it and take it home. It's part of the ecosystem.
No, we don't need to take any treasures home. We need to leave the nature where it belongs, but looking under logs and under rocks and the undersides of flowers. Some really cool bugs are generally on the undersides of flowers. So like flipping over the flowers and the flower leaves and looking under the leaf litter to see what you find. And I'm a big mushroom nerd too. So that 2.5 hour hike found 80 species of mushroom.
Oh my gosh.
80. Yeah.
I love
so
that
it's
you counted
incredible
that
what
high.
you find when you just take the time to look and look really closely.
That's awesome.
And, and that was the thing, again, talking about when we were at Acadia, I think we rush so fast through life these days that you don't take a second and that's when you're standing there staring at these gorgeous views and these beautiful trees and water. You do, like, we were standing there for like 10, 15 minutes and my husband and my daughter and I were like, oh, I guess we should move on now, but you just scan from side to side. And every time you looked, you would see something different. And, and then we saw a seal's head pop up, which is hard to see in the water. We didn't have binoculars, but we were like, look, there's something out there. But, I think that's maybe what you're trying to say too, is just take the time to just
slow down a bit, enjoy it. Don't rush to, try to cram in, the longest hike you can get in 2 hours. It's not always has to be that way. It's fine if you want to do that sometimes, but the nice slow educational pace is great too. That's gonna
I love that.
I think that's great. So okay, this has been so much fun. I mean, seriously, I did not know all of the stuff I just learned about the bees. So but now I'm curious, what challenge do you have for our listeners, Julie?
Yes, I am going to challenge your listeners to build their very own solitary bee box.
Ooh.
And this bee box is going to be a nesting site for bees like leafcutter bees, resin bees, mason bees, carder bees. All kinds of solitary bees are going to be interested in using this box, and it's going to provide a place for them to raise their young. So I'm challenging them to build their very own bee box to support some of those native bees.
Okay.
Cool. You're going to give us the information so we can put it on the website then, right, too?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. So everybody will go to our website, solveforkids.com, and you can see on this episode page for our chat with Julie about how to build this. I'm going to do this. Jeff, you should. Yeah. Are you going to do this with your daughter?
Definitely. She has friends in the neighborhood. We could probably get all of them to make one.
Yeah, that'd be, the more the better.
And then I have a question. If neighborhood friends do this, do they keep all the boxes together? Should they put them all by one house and keep them all together? Or should you spread them out?
I spread them out. That way, different kind of populations of bees will have a chance to use them. And different bees will be attracted to different yards for different reasons. So you might get a bunch of different types of bees nesting instead of just one or two.
Well, then you guys can count all the different kind of species that you see out there, Jeff,
yeah, so you can identify the bees that are using your box.
That would be
at
fantastic.
An educational pace.
Exactly.
I think Jeff's going to remember that phrase for a very long time. That's fantastic. Well, this has been a truly fabulous episode. It's been wonderful having you. Thank you so much for being on Solve It for Kids, Julie.
Thank you, Julie.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I had a great time.
Jennifer, before this episode had started, if you had asked me to guess how many different species of bee, I would have been so wildly off. I would have had to do my own homework and given myself a report that I needed to complete within a certain amount of time. Oh my goodness, so many bees, and I learned so many things about bees that I did not know before this episode.
Exactly. I mean, ditto to everything you just said. I had no idea there were this many bees. And they were different sizes, too.
Different sizes, different colors. Only half of them sting. Most of them don't particularly care about the humans around anyway, so it's not like they're killer bees coming after us and we don't have to be afraid.
But that's not my experience, and probably most people's, right? I mean, wow, I learned so much, and I totally want to do this challenge and build my own bee house in the backyard. How cool is that?
Oh my gosh. And the different ways that you can do it, and
the different effects of, like, if you're doing it in a neighborhood, how Julie told us that we definitely need to keep those separated
Yes.
to create different colonies. And the amount of information in this episode, like, I need to go back and listen to this again.
Yeah, it was mind-blowing. So if any of you go out and make your own bee house, or you just like find one of those cool colored bees that Jeff and I were we're looking for, I want to see, send them to us. Tag us on our social media. We are at KidSolve at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to check out our website, solveitforkids.com, where we will have pictures of some of these bees on there on this episode page, and also some more resources, including books that you can check out to learn more about bees.
And while you guys are doing all that, Mr. Jeff is going to be out there looking for a red bee and a blue bee.
Yes.
To make sure that Miss Julie was telling us the truth about what's going on. And I know she was.
Absolutely.
Until next time, you'll hear Jen and Jeff on
Solve It for Kids.